Hello, everybody. I'm Ulf, and I wanted to get a quick review out of the new cards from the two kind of extra sets that we're getting on the 13th, I think. December 13th is the new patch with the Alchemy set for the Brothers War and the new Explorer Anthology. So I'm gonna go through not all of the cards, I'm just gonna go through the cards that I actually think have any chance of seeing play in Historic. But there are like a good amount of cards here that you might want to play for Brawl. So definitely check them out. Uh, MTG Arena Zone, they have both sets. You can just Google MTG Arena Zone and, Brothers or Alchemy or Explore Anthology, and you'll see all of the cards. Really great website, by the way. So if you're interested in Historic Brawl, there are probably more than, there are probably some cards that I'm not going to talk about here that you might want for Historic Brawl. But let's just start. This is Penregon Besieged. Um, I'm not gonna read the cards, by the way. You can read the cards yourself. But I think this card is actually pretty interesting. It's a good design. I think obviously you're gonna want to play this in sort of a control deck, maybe. But I can see this, in the right matchup. This can be very annoying because it's one of those cards that you're playing like against a control deck. He plays this, and then you kind of don't want to play more creatures because, if you do, he's just going to keep getting value from this. But if you don't play creatures, then you you just can't win against a control deck. So it's kind of awkward. Maybe maybe you can just like kind of power through. Like maybe you think that you're just like, okay, I can't beat him if I just, not play anything this turn. So I might as well, play a lot of things on the same turn, but then you're playing into their board wipes. It just seems like a very annoying card to play against from a creature deck perspective. So, if you're playing like a black-based control deck, probably nice to think about. Yeah, my bad. So this is Raddic. I think Raddic, it kind of flew under my radar at first, but I think this card is actually very good. The hexproof is just so big here. I mean, hexproof from white and black means that it dodges so much removal. I mean, Fatal Push, all the white removal, like Lay Down Arms, Faithful Absence, March of Otherworldly Light. I mean, it's just even planeswalkers like the Emperor, the Wandering Emperor, and the Fairy Hero of Dominaria. I mean, hexproof from white and black means there's very little removal that actually kills this. I can only think the only like actually removal that can kill this. I mean, actually we just got a new one. So against red decks, maybe this isn't the best because red actually has quite a bit of commonly played removal, including a new one, which you're gonna see in the Explorer Anthology. You might know the one I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, against certain decks, this thing is really hard to kill, and the trigger, the attack trigger is also pretty huge, I think. because the cards from the spellbook, we can check them out here. The cards from the spellbook are actually kind of decent. Like, for example, you have Guardian of Faith, Order of Midnight, and Dauntless Bodyguard. 3 cards from this spellbook that just kind of, make this card even harder to remove. Like, you can just, if your opponent doesn't have any creatures, or, if they can't block it, you can just play this attack, get a Guardian of Faith, and hold up removal, and hold up the Guardian. I mean, if they actually find some way to kill it, you just use the Guardian, or, you play the Dauntless Bodyguard. And there's even like a good amount of removal here. Like, you have the Murderous Rider, the Cavalier of Night. The White Cavalier is actually also not terrible. I mean, even stuff like History of Benalia. I mean, it's not a card that you're gonna want to, put in your deck. But if you're getting it for free like this, like, it's actually a lot of value. So I think this card could be good. Maybe either as like a card that you bring in against control because it's so hard to kill, and it kind of makes them want to play board wipes even though, they don't really want to do that. Or I can see maybe like a very controlling Orzhov deck, like an Orzhov mid-range deck maybe, where you just have a lot of control, a lot of, like a lot of thought seizes and a lot of removal to keep your opponent's board in check, and then you just play this card and run away with the game. Because, I mean, if this card sticks around for even, I mean, if you get one attack trigger from this, the chances that you find Guardian, Order of Midnight, or Dauntless Bodyguard are actually pretty huge. Because you get to choose from 3 cards, you get 3 random cards. So, like, the chances that you find some way to protect this off the trigger is actually pretty big. And if you don't, there's still a bunch of good cards you can get, like Blackline's Penregon is just like a 3-mana, a 2-mana 3/1 with flash. So, you can attack, pass the turn, hold up a creature with flash, or hold up Murderous Rider. I mean, it's pretty good. So, definitely a card to think about. Crucias. This is a card. Um, I mean, I was gonna say for a Madness deck, but I don't know if you necessarily need to be playing Madness. But this card is definitely interesting. The trigger is very flexible depending on how you build your deck and what you're discarding. So it's a lot of card selection, and if you can turn the discard into an upside, this can be pretty big, I think. And I mean, this is historic, right? It's not really that hard to make discarding cards an upside. So yeah, I think this card can be good. I'm not really that experienced with the Madness decks, but like I said, like, I mean, you just have like a decent amount of ways to use your graveyard, and this card is just gonna, it's gonna feed your graveyard every turn, and it's ramping you. So, like, I mean, this card just does a lot. Jarsyl. This is definitely my favorite card from, I think, both of these sets. I mean, this card just seems really, really good. 3-mana 3/3 is not bad stats. And this the deck building restriction here is just so mild. I mean, you really just need to be playing a good curve, I think playing this with discard spells is gonna be, it's gonna be kind of obligatory, I think. Because you go turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2, I don't know, Blood Tithe Harvester and play this on turn 3 and immediately get another Thoughtseize, like, that is pretty big because there's not really that much, instant speed. Like, for example, it's pretty hard for your opponent to be able to actually activate the Revolt on a Fatal Push, on turn 3, especially if you're on the play. On the draw, there's a lot more ways, but, even in those cases, like even if your opponent does have instant speed removal, what if you go turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Inquisition, turn 3 Jarsyl? Like, man, that is very hard to deal with. Your opponent's gonna have to top deck something, and he's gonna have to top deck it quick because this card, it's gonna be so much value. You're cheating on mana. It's card advantage because it's getting stuff from the graveyard. Yeah, wow, I mean, this card just seems really, really good. I am gonna play 4 of these in Jund mid-range, and I think it's gonna be awesome. Next up is Tawnos Endures. I don't think this card is amazing, but it's definitely pretty interesting. It's kind of like a worse ephemerate, but you can also use it on your opponent's creatures on a pinch. So, and because it's instant speed, you can kind of exile a creature for a whole turn and, maybe get a good attack in, or maybe, stop them from attacking you. I don't know, this card is just pretty flexible. If you're doing blink shenanigans, then you might want to consider this. And there's also, we're also getting Reflector Mage, which I'm gonna show in the future, which is also a big boost to the blink decks. So that's why I'm mentioning this. Whoops. Yeah. Norn's Disassembly. I think this card is very interesting design. I'm not really sure how you want to play this. Obviously the biggest synergy here is with artifact tokens, power stones, food tokens, treasures, because they're not actually cards in your deck, but they are historic permanents. Historic permanents are legendary permanents, sagas, and artifacts, I think. So if you can sacrifice a food token, for example, you always like, for example, imagine you have a specific legendary card in your deck that you really want to find. So you can sacrifice an artifact token and always find that legendary creature. Or you can just do this for value, maybe like a Mardu, Anvil, sort of the meek kind of thing. I don't know. It's just, I think this can do some really powerful stuff if you build your deck correctly. I'm not sure we have the right amount of support for this card, but it's definitely something to consider. Great Desert Hellion. I think this is another one to consider if you want to play Madness. I think this is more of a Madness card though. I think like Crucias, I think you could play that in just like a good deck. Not that Madness isn't good. I think Madness is a decent tier 2 deck, but I think you really want to go hard on the discard synergies with this one. But if you do, it's a lot of payoff. I mean, a 3-mana 5/5 with Menace, like that is a big body with a good, I'd say that, after flying, I think Menace is my favorite type of evasion besides obviously like Unblockable or something. But Menace is pretty hard to deal with. And this thing is huge. It's gonna kill your opponent really fast. You get the trigger on the upkeep. So, if your opponent, absolutely, if your opponent only has sorcery speed removal, he's gonna have to kill this before you even discard anything. But if you want to discard the cards, you obviously you know, in a Madness deck, you're gonna want to do it. And this, you know, the upkeep trigger, it can even be upside. And, you know, the biggest part though is the leaves the battlefield. It's leaves the battlefield trigger, not a dice trigger. So even if this gets exiled, you're guaranteed to get, you know, if you're empty-handed, you're always going to draw one card at least. Or, you know, you don't even have to be empty-handed if you have some Madness cards in your deck, in your hand. Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, specifically in Madness, I think this card looks really, really good. I mean, the amount of times where this is, you know, you're gonna play this, your opponent's gonna be forced to kill it, and then, you know, you draw a card off of it, or you discard a Madness card and draw another one. Like, wow, that is pretty big. Next up is Forgefire Automaton. I think this is another card that is very interesting, really clever design. It's very balanced. So I don't think this card is gonna take the format by storm, but it's something to think about. I think people underestimate the value of having a 3-drop that can also be a 7-drop, you know? Like a card that you can play early, but you can also play it late, and it's, you know, it's like a game-ending threat later in the game. It's pretty big. But like I said, this card is very balanced. You cannot be looping stuff with it because, you know, because it's of the way it sets the base power of the creatures it reanimates. And but, you know, if you play this on you know, you've been grinding for like 7-8 turns, and you play this on 7, your opponent needs to kill it immediately, or you're gonna reanimate. You know, anything you reanimate is gonna be a huge threat. So um yeah, something to think about. We have a lot of good 3-drops though, for the, especially for the, like, the Rakdos decks that might want something like this. But I don't know. Maybe, you know, maybe you're like on a mono black or something. You want to play like a mono black mid range deck, or like an Orzhov mid range deck. I think this could be good there. This one is Gixian Recycler. I think this card is secretly very powerful. I mean, this is just like the fact that it synergizes so well with itself. Like, you want to be, you know, in the decks that want to mill themselves. This card is huge because, you know, it puts more creatures in the graveyard for you. It, you know, like, if you mill this, it's, you immediately get two creatures in your graveyard that you can unearth. And, you know, like a 3/1 haste for 2 mana, it's like not terrible. I don't think you play this in any deck. I think you really want a deck that mills itself by a lot, that wants to mill itself by a lot. I don't think that deck exists in Historic right now. But, you know, we're gonna get a prized amalgam sooner or later. And when we do, I think this card is gonna be really, really good. This is gonna be the kind of card that, you know, we don't see for like a year, but then they print something, and then this instantly becomes like, you know, one of those cards that you just look at it and you're just like, wow, like, this is actually kind of broken. You know, your opponent, imagine your opponent mills 2 of these, and you're just like, well, he just has infinite gas now. He's just infinite creatures that can attack me with haste. Yeah, I mean, keep this card in mind for future sets, for sure. Perilous Iteration. I think this card is also another really clever design from the Alchemy set. Obviously, this is, you know, obviously they're kind of making a comeback here, to a callback, I mean, to Expressive Iteration, but obviously this is very much worse. Just the fact that it's not in blue makes it a lot worse, to be honest, but I think this card is still pretty good. Obviously, you have to keep in mind that this can seek lands, which can be good, can be bad. You know, I think if you play this card, you might want to, uh, you know, keep in mind that you might not want to play a lot of 2-drops, for example, because, you know, like you need to play 3-drops with this. But if this seeks a 2-drop and a 3-drop, unless you're playing this card on turn 4 or 5 or whatever, it's gonna be really hard to get a lot of value from it. But I mean, this card can also be really, really insane. I mean, imagine you cast this on turn 2, you seek a land and a 3-drop. So, you know, you just basically it basically just sets up your whole turn 3 by itself. Like, that is pretty good. Or even, you know, you cast this on turn 3 and you can either, you know, hit a land and you play that land, or you hit a 1-drop and you cast the 1-drop together with this on turn 3, and then turn 4 you have a 3-drop that you can play again. I mean, this card can be pretty good. And there's also the possibility of playing this in an aggro deck. Obviously, we already have stuff like Reckless Impulse, which actually saw Modern play, by the way. People forget this, but Reckless Impulse did see play in red aggro decks on Modern. And, you know, the fact that you can seek, for example, like a Skewer the Critics or a Light Up the Stage or a Fiery Temper, especially Fiery Temper, because these cards are discarded at the beginning of the next end steps. They're not exiled. So, you know, there are ways that you can kind of game this card for it to be actually very, very good. So I think it's something to think about for sure. And it's, you know, especially now that our mana base for Gruul isn't trash because of the pain lands. You know, maybe if you're playing mono red before, you can play Gruul now and splash for a Tarkus command or this. You know, it's something to keep in mind for sure. Okay, now we are on to the Explore Anthology cards. And like I said, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to talk about the ones I think are going to see play. First of all is Mana Confluence. I think this is probably going to be the most played one. You know, just like we didn't really have any good ways to make 3-color aggro decks before. This one being, you know, like a rainbow land for fast 3 or 4-color aggro decks, or I mean, even any deck that you're really struggling with mana, this is going to be really good. I mean, this card just, you know, it sees a lot of play in Pioneer here. It's seen play in other formats before as well, and Modern. So yeah, I mean, this card is just really good. Brave the Elements, another card that sees a lot of play in Pioneer. It's definitely very powerful. It's kind of awkward though, because obviously this is pretty good against Brotherhood's End specifically, and obviously against other monocolor decks this is very good. But I'm not sure, you know, I'm not sure our white decks want to play 4 of these on the main deck like they do in Pioneer. That seems way too much for my taste. But I think this card is good. It can be good. It's gonna be decent on the sideboard. You know, you're playing against a red deck, which, you know, if your opponent's playing red, they're probably playing Brotherhood's End to some extent. And you know, you can also just save your creatures again from some removal in a pinch. This card is just pretty good, I think. But you know, maybe go easy on the amount of copies you're gonna play this. Nykthos, obviously, I think this is a big one. People were asking for this one a lot. I definitely think we have a chance. I mean, We do have Leyline of Abundance, which is very good with this, but also there's going to be a ton of other janky devotion decks. You can play mono black devotion now, and you actually have a way to use like your obliterators and stuff. And I mean, this is just a really cool card. I'm just really happy to see this in a format. We'll see how strong the mono green devotion deck is. I think it definitely has the chance of being a tier deck on historic. But I'm not sure. Maybe it's a bit too slow. But I mean, that deck is really good in Pioneer. Um, and I think it could be good in historic too. Rending Volley. I mean, I'm actually I play a lot of creature decks, and a lot of them have white creatures, and this card seems really good to me. It's really annoying. 1 mana for it hits Eidolon, it hits all the 3 drops basically from white. Instant speed can't be countered, so it doesn't care about stuff like ward or something like that. Yeah, I mean, if you're playing, it's I think it's probably a bit worse. I mean, it's a lot worse in historic than it is in Pioneer, obviously, because they actually, they actually have a mono blue spirits deck that plays a lot of counter spells and a lot of blue. I mean, it's mono blue, so they play a lot of blue creatures. So this kind of hits, both decks. So it's a really great sideboard in Pioneer. Maybe not so great in historic, but I think white creature decks are still pretty popular for us. So you might still want to play 1 or 2 copies of this in your sideboards for your red decks. Oh man, this one is I'm kind of scared about this one, to be honest. Ethereal Armor is a really, really good card. I think Auras was already like kind of an underplayed deck in a historic. I think that deck is really, really good. I basically never played against Auras and been like, wow, this was super easy, because you always have to keep the pressure going. You have to keep killing their creatures always, and sometimes they just get a savior into a spirit dancer and you can't kill it fast enough. They draw a billion cards, and even if you can't kill it, even they have 7 cards in hand, and they just started the chain going again and again. And I mean, I'm scared, man. Ethereal Armor is gonna lead to a lot of turn 3 kills. If you don't kill the Spirit Dancer, just like you might as well concede immediately, because they cast. And this is also huge for Light Paws. Like Light Paws can also tutor this, making a huge threat out of nowhere. I mean, Ethereal. I mean, this card saw a lot of modern play too in Boggles. This card is just really, really good. So watch out for the Auras decks. You might have to actually dedicate some sideboard slots to Auras now, because I think that deck got a massive buff. It's massive how big this card is for Auras. It's really, really huge. But yeah, keep this in mind. Fiery Impulse. I think this card is kind of mopey. Obviously, if you're playing Phoenix, this is like kind of a no-brainer. Maybe you're playing Prowess, but you're having trouble with 3 toughness creatures. I don't know. This card is just pretty decent. I've also seen this in play in Modern a little bit. And obviously in Pioneer for the Phoenix decks, it's also see a lot of play there. So yeah, it's just kind of a good card. Don't play it if you don't have a lot of instants and sorceries. Eidolon, this is a big one. We kind of had something similar. We had Graveyard. I forgot. It's Graveyard something, but kind of a 2-drop, a vampire that kind of do something similar to Eidolon, but it was actually not really close to Eidolon. Eidolon is a really good card. Is this gonna make Burn a real deck? I think it could, and it's mostly because of how good, especially obviously Eidolon against the Ashnod's Altar, Ominous Traveler, Trapfinder deck. This card just stops them from comboing. Basically, they cannot combo with this card on the battlefield because they're just gonna kill themselves. And so you already have some main deck hate for that deck, which is very popular right now. But also for the burn deck, you can play Whirling Vortex on the sideboard as well, which also stops that combo. So I mean, burn is just gonna completely farm that deck. You're gonna have basically 8 cards that cannot remain on the battlefield at all, or they just their whole game plan is kind of gimped. So I think burn could actually be a good deck, but Helioc is kind of making a comeback because Olf made a video on it, so there's a lot of people playing Helioc right now as well, and you know maybe it's fine. They don't actually have a lot of answers to Ferocidon, so maybe that's a card you just play 4 Ferocidons on the sideboard, and maybe you're gonna actually have a decent time against the life gain decks. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, like, if Burn can have really great matchups against Control and against the Ominous Traveler deck, I think that's enough, honestly. Against Rakdos, maybe it's gonna be a bit harder because Rakdos actually has quite a bit of life gain with the werewolf and man, the 4-drop, the name just disappeared from my mind. Anyways, yeah, Eidolon, great card, saw modern play as well, so I think this could be really good. I don't know if Burn's gonna be a tier 1 deck, but I think it has a chance. Course of Kruphix, this one is a card I'm excited about. I am gonna build a green-white kind of Maverick slash Value Town kind of deck. If you've played Legacy or Modern, way back when, this card actually saw a good amount of play. Like in Modern, in Legacy, it's kind of one of those cards that you don't really, you look at it and it just kind of seems like kind of mopey, but it's a lot of value. This card can get a lot of value. Being an enchantment creature is also pretty big. Yeah, I'm definitely going to try this in Historic. I don't think it's going to be tier 1, but I think it's going to be very fun. I think the biggest thing is that I've always wanted to build a landfall deck. Also, before I forget, the reason why I think this could be good is because of Felidar Retreat. Felidar Retreat, the enchantment that is basically, it's Field of the Dead, but also pump your whole team with landfall. I think that card is secretly very good in Historic right now. There's really not a lot of enchantment removal going around, so against a lot of decks, you can just stick a Felidar Retreat, and your opponent's just not gonna be able to grind through all that value. So, yeah, the biggest thing I was gonna say is that we didn't really have an effect for this on mono green before. At 3 mana, we obviously had Oracle of Moldiah, but the other one was either on blue, which is the reality chip, or it was on red with Rada. So it was always kind of awkward. You really want to stay green-white because of Knight of the Reliquary. So I think this card could actually be good. I mean, just Knight of the Reliquary with Felidar Retreat it's a really powerful combo because it gives vigilance, you know? So you can play Felidar Retreat, play a land, give Knight vigilance and a +1/+1 counter, then you attack with the Knight, then you can activate the Knight, sacrifice a land, grab a Fabled Passage, which, you know, gives you a landfall trigger, you pump your whole team again, you sacrifice the Fabled Passage, get another trigger. Like, you know, this is from 2 cards, you get 3 +1/+1 counters and vigilance on your whole team. Or you know, you make 3 2/2s. Or 2 3/3s, I mean, I guess. But yeah, I think this could be good. Courser, you know, I think this is kind of a jam for a lot of people. I think just great card. I'm so happy we have this card. Satyr Wayfinder. This card sees playing Pioneer in the Greasefang deck. I think our version of Greasefang is better. The Esper version. I think that version is really good. Raffine is just a really amazing card. Obviously, you also have a Diviner Fates, but hey, Wayfinder is a really great card. Has also seen played Modern before. It's just a lot of value if you want to be putting cards in the graveyard. It almost always gets you a land and, you know, a body on the battlefield. So just really good card. If you want to build around your graveyard and you're playing green, you probably want to think about this card. Mutavault, obviously classic, pretty much an auto include in all tribal decks, you know. If you're playing Merfolk, this is great. Humans, or I mean, just goblins even. I mean, this card is just think of any tribal deck you probably want to play Mutavault. But also, like, you know, like, this is just a good card, I think. For 1 mana to activate it, 2 mana in total, of course, because you're attacking with the land, so you basically need to, I mean, 2 mana is just so cheap, you know? Like, even if you're just playing, like, Burn or something, you know? Like, tap, you know, and hold up a shock or something and attack with this. And kill a creature and attack with this. It's just very cheap. Mutavault's a great card. Sees plays in a bunch of fucking formats. Yeah, I mean, if you're even remotely interested in creatures, this is probably a card you're gonna want to craft. And last one, I'm pretty sure this is the last one. Yes, Reflector Mage. This card saw a lot of play on Modern on the 5-color Humans deck, which was a really good deck, by the way. I don't know if it's gonna be, you know, I don't know if our Humans decks went to play this, because I think a big part of, you know, its playability in Modern was Aether Vial, of course. We don't have Aether Vial. So, you know, you can't play this card at instant speed, which is obviously insanely good. But yeah, I mean, I think this could still be very good. You know, if you're playing the Soul Herder deck, I think this is kind of like an auto include. And, you know, if you're playing the Soul Herder deck, you play this with Aether Channeler. Now you have eight creatures that can bounce something. And, you know, I mean, the Soul Herder deck was already pretty good against creature decks, but now it's gonna be really, really good, I think. So yeah, if you're, you know, playing Ephemerate, you probably want to think about this card. And that's pretty much it for the review. I think this set is gonna be actually pretty impactful for Historic. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff now, a lot of cards to try out, a lot of different archetypes got new cards, and yeah, I think these two sites are definitely, if you're playing Historic right now, you definitely cannot just ignore these two sites. I think they're gonna be really good for the format. You know, I don't know if they're gonna absolutely shake things up a lot, but I mean, this is a paradise for me. You know, I'm gonna have a lot of cards to be around, a lot of new stuff to try out. So yeah, I'm gonna keep making more videos. I know I said that last time, but I don't actually have a lot of time on my hands. But I'm definitely gonna be brewing with these cards. I already have the green-white landfall deck built, and I'm gonna be building more. Definitely look forward to them here on my channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great day.